I feel as though I could sit here and make millions just trading shit coins. Do you go to jail for this? Can I not do this? I think it's legal. Have I been just trading the wrong stuff? Should I be trading shit coins and be like, I'm in this to make money, just like the next guy. So when I do it, you follow my wallet. And it's like, how long do you hold on to the rocket ship?
So, again, maybe don't listen to me. I'm in this to make money. Well, of course, that's basically what played out. GM, everybody, welcome into another episode of Coinage. Happy Monday as we kick off another week watching Bitcoin try yet again to crack 100,000 as we look at the chart there. Close, getting closer, holding steady. A lot to dig into on this news recap show. As always, we bring you the biggest headlines around the world of crypto and Web3. Of course, I'm your host, Zach Guzman, coming to you live from our Brooklyn studios here in New York City. And want to thank our sponsor, our new sponsor here today as we kick off today's show. Hope everybody's doing well. Digging into a few different things, but today's show is brought to you by Babylon Labs and their vision to build a Bitcoin-secure, decentralized world. They're pioneering the future with the world's first trustless and self-custodial Bitcoin staking protocol, allowing Bitcoin holders to stake BTC on POS chains, L2s, and DA layers without relying on third-party custody bridges or wrapped assets. You can learn more at babylonlabs.io. Now, of course, as we kick off the week, there's a lot to cover. If you were watching the Super Bowl, maybe that's why we're starting late. I can't say necessarily. Maybe you called in sick and you're watching us from home. Regardless of where you're watching, we thank you for tuning in. As we recap all of the things that we saw play out over the weekend, it was another busy weekend. And if you look at the inflows, another kind of steady as she goes. It might not look that way when it comes to price, but under the hood, pretty steady. When you look at the CoinShares inflows, that's 5 straight consecutive weeks of inflows when it comes to crypto asset investment products. The number this time, 1.3 billion across all of them. So even higher than the week before. In fact, if you think about it, we haven't had a negative week, really. That first week that you see there was only negative because half of it was 2024 data. And so really, since we've turned the calendar, we haven't seen net outflows when it comes to crypto investment products. And the big storyline from this week was that, yes, Bitcoin may have seen a little over $400 million in terms of inflows. Ethereum actually seeing the largest uptick with inflows of almost $800 million as it got spanked last week with that 25% dip as news of Trump's tariffs shook the market a little bit. So interesting to kind of think about, where things are when it comes to ETH and attention and people maybe potentially buying the dip there. When you zoom out a little bit on the Ethereum chart, interesting to kind of think about what could be happening. Continues to be, obviously, as Coinage, as a community-owned Web3 show that you can co-own with us by going to coinage.media and minting. With most of our treasury in ETH, you might say, oh, Zach's just pumping the ETH bags. But no, really, I do think, as we've covered, there are a few headlines that are getting missed when it comes to what could potentially come in short order, including the idea of the SEC approving ETH staking via the ETFs. As we pointed out, Hester Peirce has basically signaled that that is and was going to be up for reconsideration as we do get a crypto-friendly SEC. And so pretty interesting to think about that idea of what happens with ETH. And at the very least, right now, you are seeing, when it comes to probably institutional investors, they're buying the dip when it comes to the ETF as we track those inflows with the help of CoinShares. So pretty interesting to kind of look at that. And of course, as we always do, we haven't had the chance because they broke their streak for the last week. Last week, MicroStrategy, now known as Strategy, they dropped the micro, perhaps because they own a lot of Bitcoin. And so you can't really call them micro, not when they own that much. And they finally got back to it. After 12 consecutive weeks of buying, they took 1 week off. They changed their name. And then what did we get? We got Michael Saylor coming out and saying that they bought again. And this is the tweet, as he always does. He likes to make this announcement on Twitter, on X, And this is the first one that we're seeing with the new strategy logo. But there it is, because they've changed their name. And they also announced that they scooped up basically $740 million worth of Bitcoin, and they bought the dip. They got it a little bit cheaper this time, 97,255, the average price on that. So Michael Saylor back to putting his money where his mouth is. And of course, as they change their name, they're also riding the highs of BlackRock, scooping up a little bit more strategy shares too. And so you put it all together, and you do potentially have kind of this weird period where everything had kind of gotten beaten down over the last week. I think this week's going to be very interesting to watch in terms of, does it continue that trend, or could this potentially be the beginning of some up only? We're going to get into, I think, some of the launches outside of Bitcoin, and as we always do, kind of comparing some of the Bitcoin dominance. That trend has continued. If you look at the chart, still sitting north of 61% on Bitcoin dominance there. So despite the fact that we are seeing more L1s launch, we're going to get into the Barachain launch in just a minute to wrap up the show. But despite all of the things that are happening here, alts have been bleeding so much that Bitcoin dominance just continues to grow. Total percentage of Bitcoin's share of the crypto total market cap. And so as we see that trend continue, you do wonder, I mean, Pantera told us in December that this was going to change. That was wrong. Hasn't happened yet. So we continue to see Bitcoin's outperformance grow. And you do wonder when that all starts to potentially change. You got ETH Denver coming up. I don't know what the ETH camp has planned. We're going to go out there and, as we always do, investigate a little bit more to try and see. But I think whether it's ETH staking, that could catch a lot of people flat-footed. I know right now there's some active shorts on Ethereum, could trigger a short squeeze, could trigger some of the things that we saw play out before with Bitcoin, particularly with Ethereum in terms of, you know, how that coin is structured, as it had become a little bit more deflationary than Bitcoin. You got to start to wonder about how much ETH is there to satisfy demand if you get a change at the SEC that a lot of people, I think, might be sleeping on. So those are the majors. That's what's going on with Bitcoin and ETH right now. That's table stakes for what we want to see play out this week. We've covered Bitcoin holding steady. We'll see what happens. We've covered strategy buying again. And elsewhere in the Ethereum ecosystem, you did have over the weekend some interesting drama playing out. Of course, if you're a Solana maxi, this is a narrative, of course, that you also try and throw some fuel on the fire on when it comes to Base and the idea of the L2 roadmap and Base potentially being too centralized to trust. And that was basically the narrative this weekend when you had some people going back and forth on the idea of sequencer fees. And Andre was out here tweeting, also in the firestorm, basically coming out and saying, look, Base is out here. They're taking the fees that they're generating via their centralized sequencer on Base, and they're taking that money and they're plopping it back in storage. And as Jesse Pollock had noted earlier, he's going to be a little bit more quiet on X because he is having a baby. And so it's up to the rest of the Base team to kind of hit back on these narratives, as they are wont to do, to defend themselves. But this has kind of always been one of those circling narratives, and it's something that we asked Jesse Pollock too back just a few months ago, because it does seem, that there is something there in the short term when it comes to the idea of Base running this layer 2, having a centralized sequencer, taking the fees, and doing what Coinbase wants to do with them. That is an active and perhaps worthy critique of Base's L2. And you had Kabir from the Base team basically hitting back on that whole idea of do not believe the Base FUD. Here are the facts. Base is and will continue growing Ethereum. We're investing all of our earnings and resources into doing this and gone from 0 to millions of new people on-chain in 1.5 years. To be fair, this has all happened very quickly. And so you do have to give them time to see their vision play out. And it's something we asked Jesse about, as I said, a couple months ago, because there are easy attacks to make particularly when it comes to trying to act decentralized, but still being the only one running a sequencer on Base. And that's kind of how you want to start. But Jesse Pollock, here's what he told us when it comes to the idea of building with decentralization in mind, specifically when we asked him about that sequencer. Take a listen. I guess technically the sequencer is one question in terms of how Base plans to decentralize moving forward. And, I guess if there's one thing, it's like right now there are a few people in the Solana camp to further that point that are questioning, is this just Base's endgame? Is Base's endgame Coinbase's endgame?
Base has prioritized decentralization from the beginning. And the reason why we prioritize decentralization is because fundamentally, and this predates Base, this goes all the way back to the founding of Coinbase, we believe that the only way you can build a global economy is if you build it on a decentralized platform. Because if you don't build it on a decentralized platform, inevitably it will be co-opted by a single corporation or a single country and start shutting people out. And we want to build a global economy. We want to build a global on-chain economy that increases innovation, creativity, and freedom. And so we are building that on Base, and Base is going to be decentralized because that's the only path that gets us there. And that's been the ethos and the statement from day one of launching Base. And we made a ton of really good progress on that over the last year. Most recently, we just launched vault proofs, which means that now anyone can validate Base, anyone can help secure the chain. Users can permissionlessly exit and enter Base, even if Coinbase decided that it wanted to kind of block something at the sequencer level. And that's a huge, huge milestone for overall decentralization of the chain. It's also a big step forward towards stage 1 decentralization, which we expect to reach in the next few months. We're really excited about that. And then from there, we're going to be working towards stage 2 decentralization. We're working towards sequencer decentralization, and in general, we're just working to make this a really decentralized platform that anyone can build on and anyone can use. And so that's the TLDR.
That's the TLDR, and that's the idea, and they're sticking to it in terms of the idea of decentralizing Base. And, again, I think you can look at Mike Dudas and his tweets over here, obviously a big Solana guy, and constantly, I think any chance to dunk, any chance to fuel that narrative, people who are anti-Ethereum or the idea of potentially, raising questions about what Base's prerogative is here are going to take the opportunity to do so. But interesting to kind of see it play out in public as always. And Mike here basically calling out the idea of what Kabir had thrown out there as being basically wild. The idea of, you need to take this and put it into a separate off-chain custody, and the idea of Coinbase's custody being potentially more secure than just having it be on Base, which I don't know if that's necessarily fair. Base has a lot of things that they have to stick to as a centralized company and things like that. So rules are a little bit differently placed for them, shall we say. But interesting to see it all play out, and interesting to see, I think, what is a narrative that will continue to be a thing to watch and how Base responds to that moving forward. But regardless, for now, one that is central and core to ETH. I think when we go out to ETH Denver, we may potentially have to, visit this one a little bit closer and see what plays out in Denver. But of course, if you want to, you can take the attack and turn it on the other world out there. And perhaps that's a good segue into what ETH is having to answer for. And increasingly, what the Solana world has to answer for, too, as more and more meme coinery continues to pop up. And over the weekend, perhaps, some might say, inevitable that Barstool's Dave Portnoy got in on the action. Potentially, really, only a matter of time until this would have happened. And it did happen on the 7th. What is it? I think that was Friday, is basically when a lot of this kicked off. Yes, Friday, indeed. Dave Portnoy talking about the idea of making money on meme coins. And he chose two, basically, to kick off what he was trying to do, making $70K off of a couple of meme coins that people were looking at, identified his wallet. He was basically trying to say, look, anybody can see what I do on chain, and kind of got him going. It kind of got him going. And anytime you can use your platform to make a lot of money, I think that's going to get you going. And so it started with those two meme coins. And then, as a play on that, another one launched, Jail Stool, which we can get into. But it kind of stemmed from him going on live on X and talking about this, ranting about the idea of pumping and dumping in the world of crypto and whether or not any of this is legal or should be legal. And under a much looser SEC, under a much looser idea of crypto regulation, unfortunately, I think people are going to be a little bit more emboldened to do things like this. And we are going to see more meme coins. That's just a fact. We talked about this a little bit with Rob Haddock. But don't listen to me. Listen to Dave Portnoy talk about it himself. Take a listen.
I feel as though I could sit here and make millions just trading shit coins. Do you go to jail for this? Can I not do this? I think it's legal. I don't understand. This is totally different than me doing my own coin, which I won't rug pull or anything. This is just being a trader. Like I day trade. Have I been just trading the wrong stuff? Should I be trading shit coins and be like, I'm in this to make money, just like the next guy. So when I do it, you follow my wallet. And it's like, how long do you hold on to the rocket ship?
So again, maybe don't listen to me. I'm in this to make money. Well, of course, that's basically what played out. We got Jailstool. The token is the one that came out after, in reaction to all of these things, then promoted by Dave Portnoy on his X account. And this is the chart. This is where it's at right now. It hit a peak of above $220 million in terms of the market cap. And then over the ensuing days, as people traded, it went down. And now we're sitting at below 40. And so you would have lost money if you weren't early on in that one, as is normally the case with meme coins. And no doubt, I got in there, Texas. Self-admission here. Got in there. Lost money, per usual, on these things. I must live these lessons so people learn. I am but a vessel of being in the trenches for those who are curious about meme coins. I do this as a act of self-sacrifice. And I play around with these things, and I lose money, which very much is what I think Dave Portnoy had written in terms of, look at me, I just lose money on meme coins, they're all shit coins, until he realized he can make a lot of money doing the old pump and dumps. And that is basically what played out. And, you can take the position of, I'm not doing anything illegal, as he's basically taking and saying, look, this isn't a bad thing. But it is a little bit different when you think about Dave Portnoy. And particularly, I have to raise this one too, because Kraken is one of his sponsors for his day trading show. And pretty interesting to see how quickly Kraken listed, if I can bring up the tweet, how quickly Kraken listed Jailstool. I think that was pretty interesting to watch, and I just got to find it. But, I mean, it took not a lot of time for all of this to play out. And if you think about why meme coins, of course, I don't need to explain this to anybody, but the old world of being an influencer is you promote some sort of product. For Dave Portnoy and Barstool, they really do lean into the merch game. But your margins on merch, not so good, right? The idea of maybe making 10, 20%, 30%, whatever it is, on a shirt. Versus just selling a token where your margins are much better because you're taking something that has no value and selling it. If you're selling for anything, your margins are already extreme and phenomenal. And if you're sponsored by an exchange that can list your token that is being sold at an incredible margin, then you're double dipping. You're getting paid to promote a token, and then you're getting, on top of that, some pretty awesome returns as you also have this token trade. This is the tweet Texas from Kraken, is basically where we're at. And you've really got to think about who's being hurt in this. If you are an influencer and you're selling a token that has gone down this much, unless you didn't buy again, unless you didn't have notifications turned on, and you're there and you're watching it all play out in real time, kind of what happened with Trump's token. And then on top of that, if you think about what Dave Portnoy has said about this one, it's just an experiment, as he said. It's just a token that he's wanting to play around with, but his real token is yet to come. And so you put all those pieces together, and I think potentially you might see the same thing play out as you did with Trump and Melania. Second one comes around, Nuke's even the first one. And, you know, it's kind of like boy cries wolf. Eventually, even your hardest followers don't want to lose money anymore. And they say, look, I'm not going to buy this. And you do dilute your brand. Ask Hawk to a girl. It just happens. And, you know, it's crazy to see people once again and again and again overlook the idea of what they're selling when they are selling these meme coins, because reputation, it takes a long time to build it up. Only a couple meme coins to destroy it, but nonetheless, Dave Portnoy out there double dipping with Jailstool. And who knows? Maybe you didn't lose money yet, and you're looking at it and saying, hey, he's still talking about this one. There you go. We told you about it. Jailstool. Now we move on to maybe potentially the other side, because, you know, right now the narrative is there are meme coins and Murad and the like, people who are deep in the meme coin space who believe in these things. There's that. And now also, finally, after a long time of no new projects really launching, we are in the quote-unquote Q5. How long some of these projects have been wanting to launch and pushed it out and delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. Barachain being one of those, finally coming out last week, as we saw at List. Token generation event came out, the idea of where that one's trading. I'm going to bring up the chart. But for right now, we can just use Arthur Hayes' tweet as potentially a good way to come in on Barachain and chat about it. If you haven't watched our interview with Smokey the Bear and the team over at Barachain, you can go watch that one on our YouTube page to learn a little bit more about what Barachain is trying to do with proof of liquidity and how they're trying to differentiate their L1. But Arthur Hayes basically coming out and calling out the Barachain team, saying, look, if you're going to launch a token here, work with your market makers to launch these things at lower prices, because the chart looks a little bit like that. Even depending on where it's trading today, it's up a little bit from 5, but it has kind of, you know, come down since that day one of listing. And that's kind of the takeaway from Arthur Hayes, is saying, hey, fix this and have your users ride up with you, not down like this. Of course, easier said than done. And we're going to have, I think, a few more projects coming out after Barachain. So it's not just this one to watch in terms of new token launches. There are a few other on the list, including Monad and what that team's been building for quite some time, as well as Story. Rumors swirling that they could be launching their token rather shortly as well. And so perhaps some lessons there. And if you look at the charts, not too distinct. If they're down and to the right, whether it's a meme coin, whether it's an L1, these kind of discussions have been going back and forth for a really long time in terms of VCs getting attacked as dumping on retail, as influencers like Dave Portnoy get attacked for dumping on retail. And of course, where we sit as a community-owned show that uses NFTs to allow us to be the first DAO co-op to pay dividends, patronage dividends, back to NFT holders, it's interesting to watch, because obviously incentives are aligned very differently if you're thinking about tokens and token generation events and the idea of who gets what, who's holding what, and inevitably to make money on that, you got to sell it. And so the questions still exist. And all these projects, whether it's, you know, Barachain, other ones, etc., you're always going to face those questions until you find a different way to build. And for everyone in our community, we thank you for joining us on that journey and allowing us to build all this, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to cover the headlines and all the big stories in Web3 and crypto. And those are the ones that we watch this week as we kick off another week in crypto. Whether it's Barachain, whether it's meme coins, whether it's Base, a lot of the same narratives basically floating around Web3 as we sit here steady as she goes to kick off the week. Ethereum still catching a lot of attention as people step in, and Sailor steps back in to buy the dip. So some common themes as we kick off another week. Per usual, we'll highlight all the big headlines for you at coinage.media, but that's going to do it for us this time. I'm Zach Guzman signing off from New York. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.